Good evening, everyone. I'm going to discuss a little bit more in depth about Syria and focus a little bit, thought I mentioned 4 key areas, focus a little bit more on the education, labor market side of the young people's transition from school to work and the delays there, and what really is happening in Syria in terms of attempts to deal, looking at really our obligation, essentially, to fulfill the promise of young people in the region. Just as a quick overview, because we need to set the context a little bit, Syria is moving away from a state-controlled towards a social market economy. So there's a lot of reform taking place, economic reforms, creating opportunities for young people if they have the right skills, knowledge, and motivation to take advantage of these. Syria hasn't been as affected by the international global financial crisis, at least the first round effects. The second round effects are just coming into being. The second round effects being lower remittances, people coming back from working abroad. These effects are taking place. But if you actually look at what's happening, unemployment has gone up a little bit, poverty has gone up a little bit, but you don't have a major crisis in terms of what's happening in the economy. The opportunities are very much still there. A lot of reforms are taking place, and the business climate's improving. What hasn't happened is it's not improving maybe fast enough. The business climate's improving all over the region, all over the world. So if you look at the doing business indicators by the World Bank, Syria's actually fallen behind a little bit, not because they're not doing things, they're just not doing things fast enough compared to other countries. But the key thing here is that there are opportunities. And I'll come back to that in just a minute. So what's happening? I think Tarik really said it right. A lot of it's about institutions. A lot of the institutions in place, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the education system, are set up so that young people are really in school and they're learning essentially to take exams at the 9th grade and the 12th grade. These exams set the stage for continuing on their education and eventually getting a job. So you're in 9th grade, your job is to pass that exam. If you don't do too well, you go into vocational education almost universally. If you do well enough, you continue on to the general secondary, which gets you on to the high school exam, and which if you do well, gets you on to universities. What's being taught is knowledge. And the kind of knowledge being taught is good knowledge, but it's not necessarily the applied knowledge. What's also the focus is that young people are foregoing opportunities to, let's say, get work experience. They're foregoing opportunities to develop key skills, working in teams, analytical thinking, basically these kinds of skills that you need to form as a group. You have knowledge, you have your skills, you have your experience. And these 3 pillars essentially are what help people get a good job. And if you focus on one of them, and the education system in Syria focuses on knowledge, and in fact the kind of knowledge you need to pass an exam, then you're really, really missing out. And we see this a lot in the data. So knowledge is a concern. Even if you look at the strict knowledge, the Middle East doesn't, an international test, the Middle East does worse than the world average. Syria is around average for the Middle East, but we're still not doing that well, even though we focus on knowledge. In terms of skills, very few Syrians actually develop these skills in school, and very few Syrians develop them after school because of the focus on generating this knowledge. You see this in the returns to education. Basically, the extra amount of money a person gets from getting an extra year of schooling in the Middle East. So if you get one additional year of schooling, the world average is you get about 10 to 15% increase in your hourly wage. The Middle East, the average is about 6%. In Syria, the average is around 3 to 4%. So the Middle East is a lot less than the world average, and Syria is a lot lower than the Middle East. So that basically says, that extra year of schooling is going to help you maybe get a job, but it's not going to reflect much in the terms of productivity, in terms of what you can do with that job. There's also a deficit in terms of skills. That young people bring to the economy. So you see a lot of people looking for work. You see a lot of waiting for jobs, but you also see a lot of vacancies. People looking for qualifications that don't really exist because they're not really being taught or developed. And I think this is not just in the case of Syria, but it really is endemic in the region, and kind of gives you a sense of how these institutions are really preparing people, as Tarik said, they were built to prepare people to work in the public sector. And when they come to the private sector, they don't really have those requisites. In terms of unemployment, the unemployment duration really is in terms of years, not in months. People finish their work and then they think about what they want to do. They don't really do the thinking beforehand, because the main focus for them is to get that grade, which then determines what they're going to do in life. Even young people say this. The main reasons young people, when we ask them, why are you unemployed, why can't you find a job, the main reason they give is weak credentials, weak skills, by far, the majority. The second main reason they give us is the work requirements. Working is too tough, it's too far, there's certain requirements. The third reason is job availability. So even young people know this. What is the government doing? Or I'm going to talk a bit more about the government and the NGO sector. There are reforms to the education system. And reforms, in the government's case, means that they've more than doubled the budget, even compared to GDP. But it's not enough to throw money at the problems. What you need to do is actually develop the skills. So the government is working with NGOs, like one of our projects, Shabab, to introduce basic skills into the school system. There's an ILO-developed curricula called Nova Business. We're working with the Ministry of Education to introduce that, and it's become part of the school curricula in vocational schools and some universities. You also have to provide job counseling. You have to be able to improve the quality of the teachers. Essentially, you need to be able to provide that key skills while they're still in school and even if they've left school early. NGOs are doing this. The government is helping to provide the work experience programs, key skills development, and those additions that you need in addition to the knowledge to make a change. And I think in the context of Syria, that really is the key focus. Creating jobs is one of it, but a key focus is really developing that experience and skills in addition to the knowledge. Thank you.